All right, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out tonight, and thank you also for joining and submitting questions. We're super excited to have you here. This week's webinar will be headed off by Madeline from GrantMe. She will be doing a presentation for us. Just a few housekeeping items before we begin. Please mute your audio, but you're more than welcome to keep your camera on and use the backgrounds that we've provided with you if you're comfortable doing so. And just a heads up that we are recording this panel. And if you have any questions or concerns, please do let us know by using the chat below. And you're also more than welcome to submit any questions over chat throughout the webinar. So I'll pass it over to Madeline to get started.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Neetu. And thank you so much to Leap for having me join today's Tuesday talk. I'm so excited to be joining today's webinar and to be here with all of you. It looks like we have a pretty big group of students joining, which is always really exciting. And I'm excited to meet you all and be here today. So my name is Madeline. I lead our community team here at GrantMe. Our office is located in Vancouver, BC, but we do have some of our GrantMe staff out east in Toronto, where a lot of you might be. And a little bit of background on myself and GrantMe. So GrantMe is, for those of you who haven't heard of GrantMe, we're an education consulting platform. And we work with students really on navigating the post-secondary journey, which a lot of you are probably in the midst of sort of navigating university or post-secondary admissions, scholarship and funding opportunities, career and internship opportunities, really a whole bunch of things. And so, like I said, I'm super excited to be here and be able to share some hopefully helpful resources and information on the university admissions process, on scholarships, and all of that fun stuff. Like I said, I lead our community team. So one of the many fun, I wear many hats, but one of the fun things that I get to do is, partner with organizations and schools and sports organizations and other youth organizations across Canada to deliver presentations and workshops and all that fun stuff. So without further ado, we'll get into it here. I'll give you a quick rundown of kind of what we're going to go through. I'll talk in the presentation, or kind of the workshop will be about 30 minutes, and then we'll have some time at the end, about 15 or so minutes, to go through questions. And if you'd like, if questions pop into your mind, you can pop those in the chat, and we can get to those at the end. So if they come to you, just put those in the chat. But I'll get started here. So today we're going to talk about a few things. Number one, we're going to talk about creating a financial plan for university. And really why that's such an important first step in your post-secondary journey. Number two, we're going to talk a little bit about how to get accepted into your top choice school or a competitive school in Canada. Then we're going to talk about finding scholarships that are a good fit for you, and really where to start with looking for scholarships. And finally, how to write winning essays, because essays are a huge part of both admissions and scholarships. So we're going to talk about writing a really compelling essay. And finally, why starting now is really important, really regardless of kind of what stage you're at, what grade you might be in. And actually, that brings me to my first question. Whenever I'm with a group of students doing a presentation or a workshop, I really love to know who we have joining. So I would love if we could quickly pop into the chat, what grade you're in, and if maybe what post-secondary institution, what university you're thinking about attending, if you know. If not, that's totally okay too, but I'd love to get to know all of you a little bit better. So you can pop in the chat, your grade, so grade 9, 10, grade 11, awesome. So we'll get a few of those going. Grade 11. Awesome. Looks like we have a few grade 11s, grade 12. Awesome. So many answers coming in. Heading into grade 12, hoping to go to McGill. Fantastic. I went to McGill. It was amazing. Grade 12, U of T, maybe Waterloo. Amazing. So a range of grades here, and Western University, Western. Awesome, awesome, awesome. So great. Thank you all so much. Just great to get a sense of everyone we have joining. And it looks like a ton of different schools of interest and different grades, which is awesome. The information will be really applicable to everybody here. So let's start off. I'm gonna go to my next slide here. Let's start off by talking a little bit about creating a financial plan for university and why it's really important to start thinking about creating a financial plan as a really good first step. So this can be a step that you can take even before applying to university or thinking about which universities you'll be applying to. This is something you can be thinking about, as a grade 9, 10, 11 student. I know we have a lot of grade 11s that are joining, but it's really important to create a financial plan and to kind of, work with your family to create a financial plan, just to really understand what university will cost holistically, and what gaps you have to fill, and how you might be able to fill those gaps with, financial opportunities like scholarships, like bursaries, like grants. So it's really important to kind of map everything out. I like to start by talking a little bit about kind of what the average cost of a post-secondary education kind of costs in Canada. And it does vary a lot, so these are averages. But the average tuition across Canada is about $7,000 per year. The average cost of a post-secondary education per year, however, when you factor in everything else besides tuition, so books, living expenses, whether that's on-campus housing or off-campus housing, food, everything else that you can really think of that's going to go into your post-secondary education year over year, that's closer to $20,000. Right. So there's quite a big gap just when you look at tuition versus the holistic cost of university. And so a great exercise that you can be doing as well before heading into your first year of university is creating a budget. So there's a lot of really great templates out there that you can download and kind of work with, but it's really good to kind of look at a budget, just to map out, the expenses that you're going to incur in university, what you're walking into university with. Everybody's in a very different financial situation. Perhaps you've worked a part-time job, or you're planning to. Perhaps your parents have an RESP plan set aside for you. So again, everyone's situation is really different, but it's good to map out what you're walking into your university, your post-secondary with, what gaps you might need to fill, and create a plan to fill those gaps. And the earlier you start, the better, right? Because you can also be weighing different options when it comes to different institutions. And if the financial aspect is a really important aspect in your decision, it allows you to kind of take a look at your different options, what each university is going to cost, what each program of interest is going to cost, and kind of work backwards from there. So now that we've talked kind of about the cost of a post-secondary education, I really like to break down for students getting into your top choice school, and how to kind of approach thinking about getting into your top choice school. Now, I know we do have students in different grades joining. So for some of you, you might be entering university next year. For some of you, you might be in grade 11. So we do have a range of grades and ages joining. But I like to really break this down for students, especially when you're thinking about different schools of choice and about the admissions process. So schools across Canada have gotten more and more competitive. It's what we've sort of found over the past few years. And the good news there is that there's really a formulaic approach that you can be taking when it comes to university admissions. So there's a few things that make it a little bit easier to kind of look at in terms of what's important. So first thing we always suggest that students do is to really look at what are called academic average requirements via enrollment reports. So enrollment reports will tell you, and sometimes they're called different things at different universities, but enrollment reports will basically tell you what the average grade or GPA was for students that were admitted into that program or into that school the year prior. And this is really helpful, right, as a benchmark, just to see, if you're a student that's in grade 10 or grade 11, just to see what you can be doing to ensure that your grades are kind of in the right spot and how you can set yourself up for success academically, right? It's also really important to remember that grades and what are called personal profiles are actually often weighted equally. So again, this is university and program specific, but nowadays a lot of schools, a lot of institutions require what are called a supplementary application or a personal profile for admissions. And your personal profile is really an opportunity for you to showcase who you are as a unique student. It's a written statement, so it's either one question or a series of questions that you answer and you submit. And in many cases as well, we're going to talk a little bit about this more later, but as many of you might know, submitting your personal profile or your supplementary application for a lot of schools in Canada actually automatically enters you as an applicant for certain entrance awards or entrance scholarships at that university, which just makes it even more important to ensure that you're, crafting a really compelling personal profile. So again, if you are needing to write a personal profile or a supplementary application, this is where you have a lot of leverage, right? It's your opportunity to showcase your values and how they align with that specific academic institution, your goals, your achievements, your challenges, everything like that. It's really your opportunity to let your uniqueness shine through. So what makes a strong personal profile? We've found that there's a few really key ingredients that make a personal profile or a supplementary application, but also a scholarship essay really strong or really impactful. So there's a few kind of key ingredients or a few key attributes that as a student, you can be really aiming to describe in an essay, both for admissions, but also for scholarships, which we're going to talk a little bit more specifically to in just a little bit. So the key characteristics are number one, sense of self and community. Number two, intellectual readiness and self-expression. Number three is problem solving and resilience. Number four, initiative and achieving goals. And number five is leadership. So I'm sure each and every single one of you can think of an example or a time when you've really, exemplified 1, 2, 3, 4, all 5 of these characteristics. So that's a great starting point, a great way to kind of start thinking about creating, a strong personal profile or a strong scholarship essay, and really what goes into it. What I'm going to quickly do, and I don't want to spend too much time on this, just about 30 to 40 seconds. I'm just going to pull up an application for the Queen's Chancellor Award, and it was a winning application. And I'm just going to let you quickly read through a couple paragraphs, because this one specifically is actually sort of long. So I'll just have you guys read through maybe the first 2 to 3 paragraphs and see if you can pick out some of those key attributes that we just talked about. So I'll leave it up here, about 30 seconds or so. Awesome. So hopefully we're able to get through a little bit of that, a couple of the paragraphs, and you were able to sort of start to see some of those key characteristics that this student specifically really exemplified in this piece of writing that made it really strong. So now that we've talked about admissions a little bit, and what makes a really strong personal profile and how to kind of what tips and tricks there are to admissions, I wanted to talk about scholarships. And one thing that I really like to do when speaking with students is I like to break down some of the myths or some of the ideas that exist around scholarships for a lot of students. Because scholarships can feel, or the scholarship process can feel very overwhelming or even intimidating for students, right? I know as a student, when I thought about scholarship applications, it was something that felt overwhelming for me. So we like to kind of break it down and just make it feel more manageable. So there's a few key myths that we find a lot of students tend to think when it comes to scholarships. So number one, students tend to think, I need to be a superstar. I need to have a 99% grade point average. I need to have founded 3 clubs within my school. I need to play on 3 sports teams. I need to, have done X, Y, and Z. But, the fact of the matter is there are so many scholarships for Canadian students and millions of scholarship dollars that go unclaimed each year in Canada. And so there really is scholarship opportunities and scholarships available for every type of student, right? So it's really about finding the scholarships that are a good fit or a unique fit for you as a student, and really prioritizing those. Now, there are certain scholarships that are highly competitive, and that do require a specific type of applicant. So some of you may have heard of, the Loran Scholarship or the TD. Those are a couple examples of highly competitive scholarships. But those are a couple examples, like I said, and there are so many, hundreds of scholarships that are really available. The second one is, it takes hundreds of hours. So, it does definitely, the scholarship application process definitely does take time. It definitely does take organization. And it's great if you can set up a system that really works for you as a student. But what we see with a lot of our students here at GrantMe is that once students write a couple really strong scholarship essays, because a lot of scholarships require essays, once they write a few really strong scholarship essays, they're able to actually use those essays for multiple applications, and they can adjust slightly if need be. But remember, your experiences overall, what you'll be writing about in your scholarship essays, stay consistent. And so for the most part, you could be recycling a lot of the essays that you're writing. Number 3 ties into the first one. A lot of students don't apply to scholarships simply because they think that scholarships are too competitive. And the idea of applying to scholarships feels very overwhelming again. But again, like I sort of touched on, there are so many scholarships. It's really about finding the ones that are going to be least competitive for you as a student and that you have the best chance at winning, right? Because they make the most sense for you to be applying to based on who you are as a student, what you're involved in, what your affiliations are, etc. Last but not least, I can start later is a common theme for students when it comes to scholarships. The grade 12 year, as a lot of you can attest to being in grade 12, is a crazy busy one, right? So there's a lot going on this year with COVID, this past year with COVID. It's been a huge adjustment to learning and different types of learning. And there's a lot going on, right? You probably have extracurriculars, you have other things outside of school. And so if you can set yourself up at an earlier stage in your grade 11 year, for our grade 11s we have joining us, there's a lot that you can actually be doing in grades 10 and in grades 11 to set yourself up as a strong scholarship candidate before you even actually apply to scholarships, many of which will become available in your grade 12 year. But that's not to say there aren't scholarships available to grade 11 students, because there are. More become available for application in grade 12, but there's a lot that you can be doing, and we're going to touch a little bit more on that in the younger years of high school as well. So the truth for a lot of students, or most students, when it does come to scholarships, because of a lot of those myths, so to speak, are one, students have a lot of trouble finding scholarships that they're eligible for. It's challenging for students to navigate or find those scholarships. It's difficult for students to know which scholarships to prioritize. And the whole process just feels very overwhelming because students don't know where to start. And so what is really good to do is to kind of break down what the best first steps are that you could be taking, or what you can be prioritizing when it comes to scholarship applications. So number 1, we always recommend that students avoid search engines, very general search engines. So, things like Google, just inputting scholarships for students in Canada will yield very general results. That's definitely something you can be doing after you prioritize the scholarships that are going to be a little bit closer to home for you. However, we recommend avoiding that being the first step that you take when sourcing scholarships. So a great first step is to check in, again, start at your roots, start close to home, check in with your school and your university. So you want to check in if you're, a high school student, see what scholarships are available to you through your high school specifically, through the district, so the school district that you're in, and through your province. So a great point of contact at school is going to be your guidance counselor. They are going to be a wealth of knowledge when it comes to scholarship opportunities that are available to you. And we are very fortunate. We get to partner with a lot of guidance counselors across Canada, at different boards, in Ontario, Alberta, BC, really all provinces. And we hear something that we commonly hear is that students don't know about the scholarship opportunities that are available in many cases. And they're under applied for. So definitely take a look at the scholarships available through your high school, district, and province, because again, those are going to be closest to home for you as a student. And then you want to, when you're in the stage of looking at universities to apply to, or you're applying to universities, you want to be looking at what types of entrance awards might be available to you as a student. So we talked a little bit about entrance awards, but entrance awards essentially are awards given to students upon acceptance or entrance to that specific university. The process is quite different, or can be quite different across different universities. So sometimes your supplementary application or your written application will be your application for the entrance award at that university. So UBC, University of British Columbia, as an example, there are entrance awards available once you simply submit your personal profile, which is a requirement for application. But for other schools, the process is a little bit different. So it's really important to kind of do research or understand what the process is for the university or universities that you're applying to. Are there entrance awards? How do you apply? What type of funding is available? Really important to kind of be doing that research and looking at the opportunities that you can be taking advantage of. And last but not least, you want to focus on affiliation, what we like to call affiliation scholarships, or what are called affiliation scholarships. Again, these are going to be very close to home. These are going to be scholarships that are close to home for you as a student, or kind of are unique. They're based on, they're awards given to students for specific involvement with specific organizations or affiliations, right? So examples of this include, if you're a part of an organization, check and see if there are, so if you volunteer with an organization or you're a member of an organization, see if there are scholarships available through that organization. If you shop with a specific supermarket or grocery store, or your family does, it's always good to see if there are scholarships available through that grocery store. Another great place to check is with your parents or your family members' employers, or your employers if you're employed. It's good to see if there are scholarship opportunities for people employed within the organization you work for, or family members, in the case of your parents' employers or other family members' employers, to check and see if there are scholarship opportunities for family members of employers. Another place to check is credit union or the bank that you bank with. Sports, if you play a specific sport, it's always great to see what type of athletic scholarships there are available, or specific scholarships with the club that you're a part of. So if you're a part of a specific soccer club, to check and see if there are scholarships through that soccer club, or again, at a wider provincial level or municipal level as well. Those are just a few examples of affiliation scholarships. But again, they're scholarships that a lot of people don't know are out there and often go unclaimed. So I really wanted to talk a little bit about how to write winning essays for scholarships, because writing a scholarship essay is a huge part of applying to the scholarship in many cases. So a lot of scholarships require essays to be submitted. And it's your opportunity to show the scholarship committee, again, who you are as a student, and why you're an amazing candidate for that scholarship. And again, in many cases, they're going through, a few hundred essays. So you really want to make sure you're crafting a very compelling essay that catches your reader right from the get-go. So that catches the scholarship committee right from the get-go, and just makes you stand out as a very unique and strong candidate for that scholarship. So there's a few kind of key ingredients, again, in writing winning essays. And so I kind of want to go through those. The first one is you want to create a really compelling hook. So how do you do that? So a hook is the very beginning of your essay, right? So it's your opportunity, again, to draw your reader in from the very first sentence or the very first couple sentences. It's the very first impression you're making, and as you know, first impressions are very important when committees are going through many essays. So it's your opportunity to really capture your reader's attention right from the get-go and ensure that they keep on reading your essay. So a hook could be something like a personal story, a powerful statement, It can be you talking about identifying a need in your community that you're going to be talking more about. So things like that, right? Then you want to follow what's called star structure. So we talk a lot about the star structure with our students here at GrantMe. Has anyone heard of the star structure? You can pop in the chat. Yes, no. I'm just gonna quickly peek at the chat. I'm curious. Yes, awesome, Lillian. Yep. Okay. No. Yes. Somewhat. No. Okay. Cool. So we've got a variety of answers. Some people that are familiar with STAR, some that aren't. Maybe under another acronym. Yeah. Awesome. So I'm going to talk more specifically about what STAR means, because again, it's something we really emphasize with our students when it comes to writing strong scholarship essays. So it's an acronym. It stands for situation, task, action, and result. And really, it's a way that you can structure your essay, because we often find that for students, A, starting is the hardest part. I always found that when writing essays, but B, structuring your essays can feel very challenging. So once you know what to write about, actually putting pen to paper or starting to write out your essay, it can be hard to structure. And so we recommend that students follow what's called the STAR structure. So I'll go through it in a little bit more detail here. So S in STAR is situation, and situation is really it's really the place, the time, and the context. So in about 1 to 2 sentences, not super long, you want to describe, for example, where and when you volunteered, who you worked with or who you collaborated with, who you were, a part of a team with. For example, if you're, a part of a specific nonprofit organization, your motivation for being a part of this project or being a part of this organization, things like that. The task, so moving on to T, the task is really the role that you played in your experience, right? So were you the president of the club that you were a part of? Were you the founder? Was it, a member role that you held in a volunteer organization? What was your main responsibility? And that's where you really have the opportunity to focus on you and your role, as opposed to the project, or as opposed to the overall project or the overall goal. You're focused on you, your role, and your responsibilities. And so, it's basically again, in this section, you don't want to make it super long, because in many cases, the prompts are quite short for a lot of scholarships, maybe a couple 500 words. So depending, you also do want to keep this to 1 or 2 sentences typically. The action is the largest part. It's about 80% of your scholarship essay is going to be devoted to action. And so this is where you're really going to describe the steps, the critical steps that you took to complete, the goal or the volunteer initiative that you were a part of. And you want to focus on conveying or describing how you demonstrated key skills, such as initiative, innovation, leadership, all those sorts of things. So this is your opportunity to highlight your hard work and really talk about what you did, the action that you took, and what the specific steps were that you took to reach your goal. The result is where you're going to describe the outcomes that you achieved from your specific involvement in the project, or in the organization, or with the experience. So it's the opportunity to reflect on the goals that you talked about at the beginning of your essay, and talk about kind of what happened with those. Did you achieve them? Did you face certain challenges? And it's an opportunity to showcase both qualitative results as well as quantitative. So quantitative results could be, something like an amount of funds that you raised, so how much money you raised, how many students you got to be a part of your initiative, things like that are more measurable. Whereas something more qualitative would be, something that you learned, something that you helped teach other students, the impact that you made on your specific community, whether that's your school community or your larger community. So that's the STAR structure. And again, it's a great way to really structure and build out your essay. The next tip we like to share with students is you want to choose less examples and you want to include a lot of detail with those examples. So students are often kind of tempted to include, when they're writing scholarship essays, really include each and every single role that they've held or everywhere that they've volunteered or everything that they've been a part of. But what's actually really impactful is if you choose the ones that were the most impactful for you and you include a lot of detail on those. So if you've held what's called an initiator role, where you've founded something that didn't exist before, you founded a club or an organization or a fundraiser, something like that, and you really built it from the ground up. If you can talk about any initiator roles that you've held, that would be where you'd want to start. And then you'd want to go toward leadership roles. So roles like coaching, or if you were, the president of a club at your school, things like that. And after that, you can go towards speaking about volunteer roles, or roles where you've been, a member of a specific volunteer organization. Last but not least, get authentic. Discuss challenges. Don't be afraid to discuss challenges or things that were, difficult. Scholarship committees really appreciate and value authenticity, and they want to see who you are, and they want to read about really, who you are as a unique student. So don't be afraid to really discuss the more challenging aspects and be super authentic there. So we're going to talk about why starting now is important for scholarship applications. And I know, again, we have a range of grades, which is super exciting. I do know we had a lot of grade 11s and a lot of grade 12s, but really regardless of where you're kind of at, what grade you're in, whether you're heading into university next year, you're heading in grade 12 next year, grade 11, whatever it may be, now's the time to plan and take advantage of the opportunities that are in front of you. So as a grade 12 student, when February rolls around, just to use February as an example, it does reduce the scholarship opportunities available to you by about 60%. Now, that's not to say that there aren't scholarship opportunities, plenty of scholarship opportunities for students in their first year of university or second year of university or into university. It just means that if you can be planning to be really hitting the ground running in your grade, end of your grade 11 into your grade 12 year when it comes to scholarships, that's really a great place to start. And yeah, you have a competitive edge, both for admissions and scholarships if you do start earlier. And the earlier you start, the more likely you are to, attend your dream school and ultimately, hopefully, have, your entire education paid for, or a really, really significant amount of your education paid for. And, our ultimate goal here at GrantMe is that students feel really empowered with the decisions that they're making, around their future goals, around their education, and that they have the tools that they really need in front of them to have that sense of empowerment. And starting early is a fantastic place to start, but really no matter kind of where you're at, there are steps that you can be taking, whether you're grade 9, 10, 11, 12, or already into university. There are things that you can be doing to really help, fund your education and resources that you can be turning to. And so that takes me to the end of kind of the speaking portion. And I'm going to stop my screen share here. I'd really love to get into questions and help answer questions if we have any. I can check the chat because I know that there was some coming through in the chat. So I can start there. But one thing I did want to mention too, I'm just going to share it in the chat before I forget. If you're interested in learning more about GrantMe and in speaking with somebody on our team here at GrantMe and learning more about your specific eligibility when it comes to university admissions or scholarships, you can also book a call with our team. So I'm going to put a link if you're interested in booking an interview with somebody on our team and just learning a little bit more about our programs and scholarships in general, or your eligibility in general. So there it is. And then, should I just kind of go through the chat here and pick through some of the questions?
Yeah, I can ask some questions from people in the chat that I've been seeing. Someone asked, are there both merit and need-based scholarships, or are most undergraduate scholarships based on academic merit?
That's a really good question. A lot of scholarships will be based on, it's a good question. There's a huge variety of different types of scholarships. A lot will be merit-based. whether that's based on academics or experiences or a combination of both. But there are needs-based scholarships as well. There are scholarships that are, specific and are needs-based. And there are also grants and bursaries that you can be looking into, which often come, alongside the opportunity for grants and bursaries will come alongside loans as well. So those are good options to look into. But yes, there are needs-based scholarships too.
There's another question that says, I know that some universities have scholarships that you are not immediately considered for when applying. Would we apply to these scholarships before or after receiving a decision from the school?
Awesome. Sorry, do you mind reading that one more time?
Yeah, so someone asked, I know that there are universities that have scholarships that you are not immediately considered for when applying. Would we apply to these scholarships before or after receiving a decision from the school?
It's a really good question. Thinking on that one. Just thinking through that. Do you mind repeating it one more time? I'm so sorry.
Yes. Let me see if I can find it. I know that they asked, let's see. Yeah, I know that some universities have scholarships that you are not immediately considered for when applying. So I assume that they're talking about like entrance scholarships.
Yep.
Would we apply to these scholarships before or after receiving a decision from the school? So whether or not they got accepted or not.
Yes, good question. So in this case, I believe I can also get more information from my team, but I believe in that case, it would be after, and that's how the process would work. Whereas for a lot of entrance scholarships across universities in Canada, you would apply before, so you'd apply as part of your application. But yes, there are schools where that would happen after your actual admission, if that makes sense. So it would be school-based.
Yeah. Awesome, thank you. There was another question.
Definitely.
What are your tips for starting off with a strong hook? Is there anything that we should avoid?
Definitely. That's a really good question. I love that question. When it comes to writing a strong hook, my advice would be as specific to you as possible. Write something that is really meaningful to who you are and what you're writing about, and try and avoid something like a quote or something that's going to be, again, very, very general. Let me find, actually, I have an example in front of me from one of our students. So this is an example of a hook that one of our students wrote. When relocating to the small town of Port McNeill, I questioned my ability to make an impact in such an unfamiliar environment. Born a city kid, I dreaded moving to a remote, isolated location. However, I knew that through discomfort, I had the opportunity to step up and create change. So you see how that student was really, really specific about kind of what they went through and what they're going to be writing about. It's compelling right from the get-go.
Mm-hmm. Awesome, thank you. Someone else asked, how do organizations and schools determine need for scholarships?
Good question. It would be very specific to this foundation. So if it's a foundation-based scholarship that's being given out, or if it's a school-based award being given out, it would be specific. So sometimes that is related to student finances, sometimes that's related to family finances or income overall. So I guess it would really depend on the specific scholarship and what they would require you to actually kind of submit or show for a scholarship, as well as for awards through schools. When it comes to financial need, it would be definitely specific. So there are different things that they're going to look at there.
Awesome, thank you. Someone else asked, if I'm currently going into university this fall, do I still have time to get into some scholarships, or is it too late?
Sorry, repeat that one more time.
If I'm currently going into university this fall, do I still have time to get some scholarships, or is it too late?
Definitely. No, it's not too late. Yeah, like I said, the opportunities for scholarships and deadlines do pass in grade 12 to a certain extent, but there are still a lot of scholarship opportunities for students heading into their first year of university or heading into university. So definitely be looking at what scholarships you're eligible for and prioritizing applications, because our founder here at GrantMe, actually, Madison, the founder of GrantMe, she started her process of looking for a lot of scholarships in her first year of university, and that's actually when she found a lot of scholarship opportunities. So look, within your school, within your program, within your affiliation, and see what you're eligible for, because the opportunities are still out there.
Awesome. Someone asked, what's the difference between a bursary and a grant?
Great question. To my knowledge, I'm going to double check on this. One is funds that are given from the school, versus one is from the government. I get mixed up between these two. Let's see. I believe grants are given specifically from the government and bursaries are given from schools directly. So oftentimes as well, bursaries, so if you're applying for a student loan specifically, and if you're eligible for a student loan specifically, and not the entirety of what you're needing for your tuition isn't filled from that student loan, you're often eligible for either bursaries or grants. So bursaries will come from your school, grants will come from the government. And so, yeah, it's good to look at what opportunities there are. They don't always have to be specifically through a loan either, but it's good to look at what bursaries are available through the school, whether a loan can help support that or open up opportunities for you to be getting bursaries. And grants, yes, grants are from the government. But again, the difference between bursaries and grants versus loans is that bursaries and grants is money that's given to you that you don't have to pay back. And loans you have to pay back. So it's money that's not yours.
Awesome, thank you. Here's a really good question. Do you have advice for students who have been applying to scholarships but haven't been hearing back?
Yes, that is definitely a challenge that a lot of students face. So many students in our programs here at GrantMe do start to feel, tired, and the motivation becomes a little bit more challenging, especially toward the end of the school year and kind of heading into the summer. My advice would be, well, firstly, there's still time. A lot of scholarship committees take a lot of time, sometimes 6 to 9 months to get back to you. So there is still time. So you may just, not have heard back, but there's still the opportunity to be hearing back from, the specific organizations or foundations. And my other piece of advice is that the process of applying to scholarships is honestly a very enriching experience, because it's an opportunity to really reflect on kind of what you've done, or find out more of the things that you're excited and passionate about. So it's never a waste, so to speak. Even if you're waiting to hear back, or you don't win the specific scholarship, like, it's still such a great opportunity or exercise to kind of go through the scholarship application experience. I know that it can be, again, heading into the summer and heading into that, like, the end of the grade 12 school year, and you've applied to so many, students can feel kind of like a scholarship burnout, so to speak. But my advice would be, try your best to keep prioritizing the scholarships that you're, that are closest to home for you, so that you have the highest chance of winning. Keep applying, remembering, like, your end goal in mind. So if you have a financial goal in front of you or an academic goal in front of you, just keep those things top of mind, and like write them down and pin them up somewhere. But remember that the process is a really great learning process, regardless of the results, so to speak.
Awesome, thank you. We can probably take a couple more before we move into the next portion, but here's a question. What are some reasons in which a person might not get a certain scholarship?
It's a really good question. Scholarships, again, are quite varied in the requirements. So they could be based on, academics, or they could be based on, the essay that you wrote, or the specific, experiences that you've had, or what you've been involved in. And so the level of competitiveness, so to speak, does vary a lot. So for instance, how many winners will be selected for that scholarship does vary a lot. Sometimes it's, a handful, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Sometimes it's, a few dozen. And so the reason could just be that it wasn't quite the right fit, perhaps, or that it was, a very, very competitive, specifically a very competitive scholarship. And so I guess it would depend on the requirements of the scholarship, and you as a candidate, and how competitive the specific scholarship is, if that makes sense, because it varies so much across all scholarships on what's required.
Awesome, thank you. Well, that takes us right to 7:30. So I want to say a big thank you to Madeline so much for coming from GrantMe and giving us this wonderful presentation. I definitely learned a lot, and I hope that everybody else did too. And yeah, so if you are looking to get some of your questions answered, I do sincerely apologize that we weren't able to get through all of them, but we do have our Money Hacks webinar coming up right now. So hopefully you'll get some of those questions answered. And if you are looking for further information, you're more than welcome to visit GrantMe's website just to find out some more information there. So thank you so much,
Thank you.
Madeline.
Thank you so much. Thank you all.